The air in Seattle always feels a little heavier right before a storm, a thick, electric dampness that settles into your marrow and makes the lights of the city look like they're bleeding into the mist. Looking back, that's exactly how my life felt 3 weeks before the wedding. My name is Julian, and for 3 years I believed I was the protagonist of a success story. I had the career at a top-tier architectural firm, a condo overlooking the sound with floor-to-ceiling glass that captured the sunset, and I had Clara. Clara wasn't just a woman, she was an event. She was radiant, sharp, and possessed a laugh that could make you forget the grayest, most soul-crushing Pacific Northwest winter. We were sitting in a high-end tasting room in Queen Anne, with the scent of vanilla bean and expensive lilies filling the air so thick you could almost taste it. We were surrounded by samples of lemon elderflower cake, swatches of ivory silk, and crystal flutes of champagne, discussing the logistics of forever. I looked at her, and for a split second her smile didn't reach her eyes. It was a flicker, a haunting, distant longing that vanished the moment she realized I was watching. I brushed it off as wedding jitters. Everyone gets cold feet, right? But I didn't realize that some ice never melts. It just waits to freeze you out from the inside. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Here on Family Secrets and Revenge, and we dive into the shadows of the heart, and this story, it's a long, dark fall into the truth. The first red flag wasn't a scream, it was a silence. It happened on a Tuesday, an unremarkable evening where the rain was tapping a rhythmic, mocking code against our window. Clara was in the shower, the hum of the water masking the sound of my movement. Her laptop was open on the kitchen island, the screen glowing with the spreadsheet of our final guest list. I wasn't snooping, at least that's what I told myself. I just wanted to see if the seating chart was finalized so I could tell my Uncle Teddy wasn't sitting near the bar. But as I scrolled through the digital layout of our reception at the glass conservatory, my heart skipped a beat, then plummeted. There, we're at table 1, the table reserved for immediate family and the wedding party, was a name that felt like a physical blow to the stomach: Elias Thorne. Elias wasn't just a guest. He was the ghost that had lived in the crawl spaces of our relationship for 3 years. He was the one that got away, the high school sweetheart who had moved to London and left Clara's heart in a million jagged pieces. She had told me multiple times that they hadn't spoken in years. Yet there he was, right next to her, maid of honor. My blood began to simmer with a mixture of confusion and a rising cold dread. The shower stopped. A few minutes later, Clara walked out, the steam from the bathroom clinging to her skin. She was wrapped in a plush white robe, drying her hair with a towel. I didn't move from the island. I just pointed at the glowing screen. My voice was steady, but my hands were trembling. "Why is Elias on the list, Clara? And why is he at table 1? She didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She just walked over to the fridge, poured herself a glass of chilled water, and took a sip, her movements agonizingly slow. "He's back in town, Julian," she said, her voice sounding like it was coming from a great distance. "It's about closure. I can't start my life with you if I'm still wondering what if. Having him there, seeing him while I marry you, it proves to me that I've moved on. It's for us, not for him." "Closure?" I snapped, the word feeling like ash in my mouth. "Closure happens in a therapist's office, Clara. Not at the altar of our wedding. You invited the man who broke your heart to watch me give you mine? Do you have any idea how that looks to my family?" "Into me?" She walked over and put her hand on my chest, her eyes wide and pleading. "Julian, you're the man I'm choosing. Doesn't that mean more if the alternative is standing right there? Please trust me. I need this final chapter to be closed so we can start ours." I looked into her eyes, searching for a lie, but she had become a master of the mask. It was the kind of twisted logic that only makes sense when you are starving for a reason to stay. I chose to trust her over the instinct screaming in my ears that I was being prepared for a slaughter. The following evening, I met my best man, Marcus, at a dimly lit bar in Belltown. The smell of hops and old wood normally relaxed me, but tonight I was on edge. I needed someone to tell me I was being crazy. Instead, Marcus slammed his beer down on the coaster. Julian, he listened to me, Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. Nobody invites an ex to the front row for closure. They do it for a reaction. They do it because they want to see if the other guy will stand up and stop the wedding. If she needed him there to prove she moved on, then she hasn't moved on. She's testing the waters, and you're the one drowning. She's just emotional, Marcus, I defended her, though my voice sounded hollow. The wedding is a lot of pressure. She's overthinking things. She wants everything to be perfect. Pressure makes people honest, Julian, Marcus countered, leaning in close so I could see the genuine concern in his eyes. And right now, Clara is being honest about who she's thinking about. It's not you, man. It's the guy at table 1. If you go through with this without getting a real answer, you're walking into an ambush. Call it off. Just for a month. See how she reacts. I brushed him off. I told him he was being a cynic. I told him our love was built on something stronger than a decade-old crush. I was a fool playing a part in a play I hadn't read the ending to. I spent that night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about our 3 years together. I remembered a night we were out at a street festival in our first year, and a song came on, some indie ballad from 10 years ago. Clara had stopped dead in her tracks. Her eyes went glassy, and she went silent for 3 hours. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "Nothing, just a memory." I realized now that every time she had gone quiet, every time she had stared at the ocean for a little too long, she wasn't thinking about our future. Well, she was mourning a past she never truly buried. I thought I was healing her. I thought my stability, my career, and my unwavering love were the medicine she needed to forget Elias. I didn't realize that you can't heal someone who is addicted to their own heartbreak. She wasn't building a life with me. She was using me as a bandage until the original wound was ready to be reopened. I was the safe choice, the man who provided the foundation for a house she intended to burn down. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private bistro overlooking the marina. The lighting was amber, the wine was flowing, and the atmosphere was supposed to be celebratory. My parents were there, looking proud, talking to my colleagues. Clara's parents were there, but they looked anxious. They avoided my gaze. Then the door opened, and the air seemed to vanish from the room. Elias Thorne didn't enter the room. He invaded it. He was wearing a tailored charcoal suit and moved with a confidence that felt like an insult to everyone in the room. He didn't come to me first. He went straight to Clara. I watched from across the room as her entire posture changed. She didn't just greet him. She leaned into his space. Her hand brushed his arm, a lingering touch that lasted 3 seconds too long. When he finally approached me, he didn't offer a handshake. He just gave a small, mocking nod. "Julian," he said, his voice smooth and dripping with a fake British-inflected condescension. "You've done well for yourself. This place is charming." Clara always did have a taste for the safe option. "Congratulations on the big day." He didn't stay to chat. And he just left me standing there, feeling like a guest at my own funeral. Late that night, after the dinner had ended and the guests had retreated to their hotel rooms, I realized I'd left the gift for the ring bearer, a small silver compass, at the restaurant. I drove back, the city lights blurred by the mist. As I walked down the long, carpeted hallway toward the private dining area, the lights were dimmed. I saw them. Clara and Elias were tucked into a shadowy alcove near the emergency exit. They weren't kissing, but they were so close that their breath must have been intermingling. Elias was holding her wrists, his head bowed toward hers, whispering something into her ear that made her shudder. Clara was crying, not the happy, overwhelmed tears of a bride, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that sounded like grief. And I stood frozen in the shadows, a ghost in my own story. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they would hear it. I heard a snippet of his voice. "It's not too late, Clara. Tomorrow is just a day. You know where your heart is." I should have stepped forward. I should have ended it right there. But I was paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. If you were in Julian's shoes, standing in that hallway and seeing the person you're supposed to marry in the arms of their past the night before the wedding, what would you do? Would you walk away, or would you demand the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading every single one. I woke up on my wedding day feeling like a man walking toward a gallows. The sun was shining, a rare, hush-bright Seattle day, but I felt a coldness in my bones that no amount of coffee or sunlight could warm. My father came into my room while I was struggling with my cufflinks. He looked at me, really looked at me, and said, "Julian, you look like you're heading to a funeral. You've been staring at that wall for 20 minutes. Is there something you need to tell me? It's never too late to call a car and leave. I'll handle the guests. I'll handle the gossip. Just say the word." I lied. I told him I was just tired. I told him I was nervous about the speech. I couldn't admit that I was terrified that the woman I had built my world around was slipping through my fingers like sand. I spent the morning in a trance, watching the tuxedoed men around me laugh and joke, feeling like I was the only person who could see the cracks in the foundation. Oh, I felt like a spectator at my own demise, watching the clock tick down to the moment I would lose everything. The wedding was held at a stunning glass conservatory overlooking the Puget Sound. It was a masterpiece of architecture, transparent walls, hanging gardens, and the blue expanse of the water as a backdrop. It was designed to be open and honest, which was the ultimate irony. As I stood at the altar waiting, the heat from the sun through the glass felt oppressive. I saw Elias arrive. He didn't sit in the back. He walked right to the front row on the bride's side and sat down next to Clara's mother. He wasn't wearing a traditional suit. He was in a relaxed linen blazer, looking like he was attending a garden party rather than a wedding. He caught my eye and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had already won. I looked at Clara's mother. She wouldn't look at me. She kept adjusting her hat, her face pale. That's when I knew. This wasn't just Clara. This was a conspiracy of silence. Everyone on her side of the aisle was in on the secret. The string quartet began a haunting, slowed-down arrangement of Canon in D. The heavy oak doors at the back of the conservatory swung open, and the room fell into a vacuum of silence. There she was. Clara looked like a vision from a dream I was about to wake up from. Her dress was a cloud of hand-stitched silk and French lace, her veil trailing behind her like a lingering memory. The guests stood in unison, a collective gasp rippling through the glass hall. But as she began that long walk, her eyes never met mine. Not once. She didn't look at her father, who was beaming with a pride that made my stomach turn. She didn't look at the white lilies lining the aisle. Her gaze was locked onto Elias Thorne in the front row. It was as if there was an invisible high-tension wire connecting them, pulling her toward him, and I was just a physical obstacle in the way of their reunion. When her father finally reached the altar and placed her cold hand in mine, his palm was sweaty. He leaned in and whispered, "I'm sorry, Julian." So softly I almost thought I'd imagined it. He handed her to me, but he looked like he was handing me a ticking bomb. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice booming about the unbreakable bond of love and the sacred trust we were about to forge. Every word felt like a needle under my skin. Then came the time for the personal vows. I had spent 3 sleepless weeks writing mine. I spoke about the first time we met at the rainy pier, about the way her ambition challenged me, and about how I wanted to be the man who deserved her light. I poured my soul out in front of 200 people, a final, desperate plea for her to see me. When I finished, there was a long, agonizing silence. The only sound was the waves of the Sound crashing against the rocks outside. Clara didn't pull out a piece of paper. She didn't look at me. She took a deep, shuddering breath, and for the first time she turned her entire body away from the altar and toward the guest seating, toward him. "Julian," she started, her voice cracking with a fragility that I now realize was entirely practiced. "You are an incredible man. Well, you have given me a life of stability and kindness that I never thought I'd find. You are perfect in every way a husband should be." I felt the blood drain from my face. I knew the but was coming. I could feel the oxygen leaving the room. "But standing here," she continued, her voice growing stronger as she locked eyes with Elias, "I realize I'd be committing a crime against God and against myself if I said I do. Elias, you are the love of my life. You always have been. The years apart were just a long, cold winter. Seeing you here today, I realize I can't marry Julian when my heart has never left yours. Julian, I'm so sorry, but I can't live a lie anymore. It's always been him. The silence that followed was absolute. You could hear a pin drop on the marble floor. Then the murmur began, a low, eye-buzzing sound of 200 people realizing they were witnessing a catastrophe. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in Julian's story and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been humiliated in a way that felt like it was televised to the world? That's what this was, a public execution of my dignity. Elias didn't hesitate. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor with a sound like a gunshot. He didn't look at me. He didn't apologize to my crying mother. He walked up to the altar, stepped between us, and took Clara's hand. She dropped her bouquet, white roses and eucalyptus, and they scattered like debris. He turned her toward the exit, and they walked out together through the rows of stunned, silent guests. I stood there, looking like a man who had just survived a plane crash only to realize he was the only one left in the wreckage. I don't remember leaving the altar. I just remember the cold, salt-tinged air hitting my face as I walked out the side door. I didn't go to the reception hall where $50,000 of Wagyu beef and vintage wine were waiting for a party that would never happen. I didn't go to the hotel suite. I got into my car and I drove. I ended up at a dive bar 40 miles away in a town where nobody knew my name, still in my tuxedo. I sat in a dim corner, drinking cheap whiskey until the world stopped spinning. My phone was a vibrator of constant pings. "Are you okay? Where did you go?" I didn't want their pity. I realized then that my life hadn't just been ruined. It had been a theater production where I was the only one who didn't know the script. I was the financier of my own destruction. A week later, the fog began to lift, replaced by a searing, white-hot clarity. I went back to our condo to pack my life into boxes. Clara was gone, presumably hidden away in a hotel with Elias. While clearing out the junk drawer in the kitchen, I found a burner phone tucked inside an old oven mitt. I shouldn't have looked, but I had nothing left to lose. The text between Clara and Elias went back 6 months. This wasn't a moment of clarity at the altar. This was a choreographed performance. Elias hadn't just showed up in Seattle. Clara had paid for his business class flight using our joint wedding savings. They had been talking about this for months. She wanted the drama of a wedding escape. In one text from Clara read, "He's so predictable, Elias. He thinks he's my savior. He has no idea he's just paying for the stage where I finally choose you." Another text, dated 3 days before the wedding, made my blood run cold. "Elias, make sure you wear that charcoal suit. I want to see you in the front row. I want Julian to see exactly what he's losing." It was a game. I was a prop in her twisted romantic fantasy. They say living well is the best revenge. But here at Family Secrets and Revenge, we know that sometimes you need a little help from the law. I wasn't just a heartbroken fiancé. I was a man with a very good lawyer and a mountain of digital evidence. Because we hadn't signed the marriage certificate, Clara had no legal claim to the house I had purchased 6 months prior. I filed for an emergency injunction to remove her name from the deed and change the locks that afternoon. I then sued her for breach of promise and fraudulent inducement. I didn't just want my money back. I wanted the world to see the ledger. I calculated every cent I had spent on her, from the engagement ring to her master's degree tuition, and I went after it with the cold precision of an architect. My lawyer, a shark named Harrison, looked at the evidence and smiled. "Julian, this isn't a lawsuit. It's an eviction of her entire future." Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. Do you think Julian's reaction was too harsh, or did Clara earn every bit of the fallout? The fallout was spectacular. I invited Clara's parents to my office. I showed them the texts, and I showed them the bank statements. Clara's father, a man of intense pride, looked like he had aged 20 years in 20 minutes. "We had no idea, Julian," he whispered. We thought she was just nervous." "No," I replied, my voice as cold as the Seattle rain. "She was calculating, and now she's on her own." They cut her off entirely. They didn't even pay for her moving truck. Elias, as it turns out, was a grifter who had been living off a dwindling inheritance in London. Once he realized Clara didn't have my 6-figure income or my penthouse to support his lifestyle, The love of his life suddenly became an expensive burden. Within 3 months, he had skipped town for a woman in Vancouver, leaving Clara alone in a studio apartment she could barely afford, working a retail job she once looked down upon. It's been a year now. I moved to Chicago, far away from the rain and the memories of the Seattle Sound. I've started over, and for the first time in my life, I'm not looking for a heroine to complete me. I've learned that the most dangerous people aren't the ones who scream their hatred. They're the ones who whisper their love while they sharpen the knife behind their back. Clara tried to call me last month. I didn't answer. I didn't even listen to the voicemail. I just deleted it. Some stories don't need a sequel, they just need an ending. I am no longer a placeholder. I am the architect of my own life. Thank you so much for joining me today on Family Secrets and Revenge. This was a long journey, and I appreciate you sticking through the heartbreak with me. If you found this story as wild as I did, please hit that like button. Leave a comment with your overall thoughts on Julian's path to justice, and subscribe so you never miss another deep dive. Your support keeps this channel alive. Until next time, stay sharp and watch who you invite to your table.